Welcome to Great Talk and Entertainment. I'm your host, KJ, and this is the YouTube channel where I review movies and TV shows from my favorite superheroes, including Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and much more. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Great Talk and Entertainment official channel. Now let's go, baby. Welcome back to the YouTube channel, everyone. My name is KJ, and today's video is my spoiler review for the new movie, Dracula, A Love Tale. So if you have not seen this show, please pause this. And before you go, could you hit the likes up button, aka the thumbs up button? That would help my YouTube channel out. Come back and let me know what you think about Dracula, A Love Tale. And if you're still not convinced to see this, I have a non-spoiler review where I talk about this in a non-spoiler way. So check that out, give it some like, share it, and let me know in the comments below here what you think about Dracula, A Love Tale. So again, this is a spoiler review. Y'all been warned. Now, let's get into it. This film starts off where it just shows, a background, and it just explains this film takes place in 1480 AD, as we see Dracula, aka Vladimir, and Elizabeth, or Elizabella, just, making love to each other, and it's just showcasing how much they adore each other, they love each other, it's not just them just making love to each other, but they goof around, they bond, they talk, just showing how strong their love is for each other. But Dracula is called to war, and these two guys are just, trying to get him ready, as the two are just too attractive to each other. So they adore each other, they need each other. And, this is Dracula when he's a little bit younger. He's young, he's full of spunk, he wasn't a vampire yet, And, he's a prince, or maybe a king at this point, I forget. But, they're getting him ready, and he's getting ready to fight. And he goes down where the high priest, and they do a prayer, just pray for safetyness, to survive, pray for the kingdom and the country. And Vladimir does a prayer and asks, he wanted God to protect his wife, and in a demanding way. And this kind of foreshadows, in a way, it's funny too. This kind of showcases there, everybody, even the legendary Dracula was a little bit of immature, He was a little bit young and naive at times. He wasn't, he wasn't learning, but he had a lot of life to learn. And in this film, we learn, you see him have plenty of years and years and years of time to grow and mature and get through his pain and stuff. So again, they're just showcasing, here's a young guy, Vladimir. He's young, a little cocky, and he's ready to go to war anyway. He's ready to throw hands, he's ready to get that sword out, he's ready to go to war, take down the other country that he battles, right? But so he's not taking it very serious too, he's kind of okay, yeah. I think he showcased the type that, he likes to go to war, right? And of course this is medieval times, so he wants to go to war. He wants all the smoke. And so the battle begins, and Vlad and his men, succeed in the battle, but his wife was being escorted during this, but the Muslim soldiers did a sneak attack. They were spying, in the trees and stuff, and they were trying to get his wife. and they were gonna, stab her and murder her, just to get to Vlad. And word got out, and he rushed to save her. And what's crazy? This was this was like, I was like, no way, like. But they had like these bear traps, and Elizabeth or Elizabella, it was like she was trying her best, but she did hit the bear trap, and God, that must have hurt. And it's cold, there's snow, and these soldiers, they were kind of like taking their time, so she had time. But Vlad, he got there too, but he hit a bear trap. And I was just wondering, like, man, this is like the worst idea. Like, it probably sounded good to put those booby traps, the bear traps. This is what you use to catch wolves or mostly bears, so you get attacked by a bear. Keeps you away, keeps the bears away. But I get it. It probably sounded like a good idea, right? Like, because it's gonna snow, but God, it didn't. And again, it sounded good on paper, but I was just thinking to myself, like, man, that is the worst idea ever. Like, because you fell in your own booby traps. And if it was the other soldiers' idea, they messed up too, because if they knew where they replaced it at, they wouldn't have to take their swords and hit one just to get there. And it took them a long time, to get to her. And it was kind of not silly, but I was like, man, that was a horrible idea. Like, just because, like, why would you do that? Why? Like, just why? Like, baby, I hope, and historically we learn that we should never do that close to it, and those should be used for better uses, but not for that. So that's why they kind of lost too, in a way, as far as the kingdom versus kingdom type war battles. But one of the soldiers got so close to her, but luckily Vladimir, got close enough, so he threw his sword, like, just, threw it like a football, right? And it got him, stabbed the guy, and ended up stabbing her, and she didn't live. And he was more crushed about this. But they won the battle, but he was so mad and so angry at God. And this is what led him to become a vampire. I think that's what they're trying to say, because in this film they never really showed it, because he rebuked God, he stabbed the priest, like he grabbed a staff or a decoration of a cross that he broke in half with his knee, and then stabbed the priest with it, and he just slammed the dead body right on like a holy, like, table or coffin type thing. And then, like, it got very dramatic, because, like, the cross with Jesus on there, blood came out his eyes, just representing the idea, like, oh man, you just drawing blood in front of God. And so God pretty much punishes Vladimir and makes him a vampire, basically. And then it just fast forwards to 400 years later, and it's in France, and a priest is sent to this, like, hospital that has, like, patients that are mentally illness, and we meet a female vampire named Maria, who, in this scene, she was very chained up, and the priest was asking her questions, but to get her talk, he gave her a little bit of blood from this young man who, in this scene, as a visual, they made him look like a kid. Even though he was a young man, I'm pretty sure he was like a teenager or whatever, or just at least 18, 19. But the way they visually made this person, they made him look like a boy, but he was a young man. And, he represented the idea of, like, Marie, this vampire. She was so attractive, but she's like, 300 something years old, right? Like, she wasn't the first generation, but she was like a second, third, fourth, or fifth type generation. And, they got her to talk, and she was just explaining, like, why she's here. And she didn't say too much, but she said, oh, don't worry, you're going to meet him, right? The prince, aka Dracula. And he's looking for his true love, his wife. And he asks, like, well, what is she? She's like, she's just beautiful. But you notice in this film that I notice is that she seemed type of jealous because Dracula is so in love with Mina, who's pretty much the doppelganger of his wife, Elizabeth or Isabella. But what I liked about this one scene kind of made me laugh is the young man. He was so attracted to Maria, this redheaded vampire, and you can tell like he would have just risked it all and stuff. And even though that had been a horrible idea because she would have ripped him to shreds, which she does in the movie, and turns him into a vampire and stuff. And it kind of bothered me. They never really like touched upon that. Like, you never seen that kid. Like, did he wake up? Was he hungry? Did he escape? Who knows? I didn't know. They never really talked about it, but for that moment, they kind of got the idea like, okay, the vampires are coming and Dracula's on his way and we need to find this woman. And what's funny is, Mina was there the whole time because Maria has made friends with Elizabeth or Mina, who's Elizabeth is what I'm trying to get at. And I thought that was really cool and just very coincidental. Now, before I move on, what I liked about this is that this scene, and I know it was just kind of like what I was saying about Maria. She was just showcasing like Dracula is going through a really horrible grief, and I like how they displayed this whole film and told a story that's been told before through the view of just going through grief, and I thought that was really cool. Now, we also meet this character named Jonathan Harvicker, who's traveled to Transylvania, and he's trying to negotiate a property sale, which is the castle. And we see that he's engaged or getting married to Mina, and we didn't know that until he started hanging out with Dracula. And this was one of my favorite scenes is when Jonathan was getting like escorted. This is how they would drive. There would be a guy on a horse with a carriage, and he only dropped him off because he's like, I'm not going any further, and told him to walk. And it's dark. And this is one of my favorite scenes as it looked so good visually. Now, the whole movie looked good visually, but this, to me, the way they got the darkness, it felt creepy. It felt scary. You could feel the horror because you saw these wolves, and I believe these wolves weren't regular wolves. I think these were werewolves, right? I think this would have been like a Twilight werewolf. They weren't like your typical where they're standing on their 2 feet, like howling at the moon, but they look like regular wolves. But I believe, to me, there were werewolves just because of the fact, like, this is Dracula. If vampires exist, I'm sure that werewolves exist in this film, this universe, and etc. And so I believe those are werewolves. but because they're really watching him. Yeah, wolves can. Well, if they lock on you, they will lock up on you with their eyes, of course. But just something was telling me these are werewolves, so I was just going to put that out there. But he was walking, but it just looked so scary. I felt sad for him because he was like, "Oh, I'm not a believer," and the guy who was, driving him, well, weren't driving him because it was a horse, but gave him a cross. But he's like, "Oh yeah, thanks," but he didn't really care. Like, boy, I would care because this was Dracula's like territory. Like, this is his turf. Like, you should watch your back. And again, but it did set the tone that this is a trap too. Because I feel like Dracula knew that he was with Mina. I think all the people or the vampires he sent out, he got that information. Because why would he sell his castle like that? I mean, I would if I was him. The price that he could have got out of that, I would. But that's just me. So I knew this was like a trap. Like Jonathan was doomed from the beginning, and obviously he made it obviously with the chilling, dark, cold woods and all that. So he was definitely trapped. But he went in there. He met him, and they were talking, having a good time. He told Dracula he's not a believer, and there was some Star Wars stuff going on with the Force thing. Like Dracula, like passed the butter or something. He passed some type of side dish. And then he took the cross that fell out of Jonathan's bag and used the force and threw it in the fire pit. Like, I don't know what, but that was some Star Wars stuff right there. And I thought that was why I thought that was cool. And then in the dining room, we saw like these gargoyles. And we come to find out later that they can move, but they're also just little kids. And at the end of the film, we see like when Dracula is no more, they all look like little boys. I don't think there was little girls as the gargoyles, so I think they're all just little boys. But I didn't even realize, but I liked these gargoyles before I knew they were like little kids. That they just seem very like I Am Groot or Baby Grogu or Baby Yoda, like just cute looking, cuddly, very comedy-ish. And I thought they were like I enjoyed watching them throughout the time, but then I felt really sad because again they're just little boys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where are their parents at? But before all that happened, they're hanging out, and then Dracula's like, "Oh, you're gonna have to stay the night, and I want you to stay in this room. Do not leave this room." And stuff. And what does Jonathan do? He does the opposite, and he goes down where Dracula is sleeping at, opens up the coffin, and then those little gargoyles grab him, tie him up, and Dracula's like, "Now I gotta eat you. Now I gotta destroy you." But he gives him one wish, and Jonathan asks to hear his story, basically. And Dracula is shocked. He's like, "You want to hear this old man tell you a story about his life?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he tells a story about like what happened after his wife died and the grief he was going through, and he was laying on her tomb, and one day just a bunch of snow, and he tried to like end his own life, and this is where he realizes like he can't die. But again, they never really, and maybe I didn't pay attention to it, but I checked twice, and I don't think they mentioned what caused him to become a vampire, but they kind of interpreted that God just decided, okay, you're a vampire, without God even saying the words or just showing something that would represent or look like God in the movies, right? So I don't know. So, because when he got out of that, when he fell asleep on top of his wife's grave, and there was just a bunch of snow, and he just woke up, and then he talked about the plague and stuff. So people were just dying of diseases. But and then they really never explain like where did all his soldiers and men go? Like he was just alone in this castle, right? Like I don't know. And he jumped off this castle multiple times, and I swore at first that the snow like broke his fall. I was like, "Oh, it has to be the snow. Like maybe it's just really deep snow." But when I saw Jonathan jump off the castle, or he didn't jump off, the gargoyles like cut his like he tied a bunch of pillows and blankets or whatever or sheets, and they cut him off, and he just fell right, and he was hurt. So I was like, okay, so it wasn't the snow that broke his fall. He was just a vampire at that moment, and he didn't realize it. But we see Dracula just explain like how much sad he was, but then he decided to travel the world and maybe find his wife, right? Or just somebody who would look like her at least. And they never really explain like how the doppelganger work. Is this a multiverse story or nothing like that? But you just knew that he was on the search for love. And he went all over the world and he was trying to find this perfume, which this is one of my favorite scenes is, when he got this perfume, I just laughed at how everybody just fell in love with Dracula. Puts him on and they're all like so horny for him. Everywhere you go, like, and I love the dancing. There's a little dancing in there and stuff, but it was just so good. And like he still uses this perfume. Like ever he tells a story, Jonathan likes like this is why you should let me go. Like you shouldn't murder me. He's like, I have somebody who I love, and he's like, here, look, I have a picture of her in my necklace. And he looks at it and he's like, oh my gosh, he's shocked. Like this looks like Mina looks like his wife, Dracula's wife. And he's like, for you, I'm gonna let you live because I need her. And he lets her live. And it was funny. Like I told you about those gargoyles, how we know they're like just little boys. But he's like, he told him his backstory. He's like, all right, let him down. But they were like being very kid. He's like, let them down. And it was so funny. But then like when this came, he's like, all right, you just want, they were holding him. And I'm assuming these gargoyles were really strong. So they were holding him, Jonathan, into his chair. And it was just funny. Like they're really strong little boys, like, or gargoyles. So I love that. And then, like, he goes and he gets ready. And instead of biting Jonathan, because this is going to bring his youth back, he goes to this place where there's a bunch of nuns. And I was like, oh no, they're not the nuns. But again, he's mad at God. But God's punishing him in this. And I just was like laughing. And not like ha 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 laugh. It was just kind of funny that when he puts this perfume on, Dracula's old, looks dead, like, and he's bald. I thought that was his hair, but it was just a wig, and I should have known better. But he's just dead. But like, he puts on the perfume, and these nice nuns were trying to feed the man, and he puts them on. They all become horny for him. And there's this woman. It was a bigger woman, a thick woman, which not hating at all. She's just, this thing just like forces her to like drag her feet, like it was like pulling her like a magnet. Now again, I just realized that Dracula can do some Star Wars Force stuff. At first I thought it was the perfume, but I remember if he can pass the butter or the side dish with just using the Force, he was just using the Force to bring everybody to smell him. And they were all wanting him. And, it was just like piling up. And he's just rising to the ceiling. And it was very like a biblical picture. I don't know what you call that picture, but it's a real art. But not of Dracula. But it was just It was just so funny. But it was scary at the same time because, well, it was feeding time. He let loose. And there was a lot of blood. You know what was interesting? I have to give credit to this film. The director really knew when to place a gory, bloody scene without ruining the whole film, where it just felt like really balanced out. But at sometimes too, that I said in my non-spoiler review, but I'll say it here and I can really explain it. Why I didn't like it is because I like the movie, but there's things that I wish they did that made me not like this film so much. I just wish that it was more vampire themes, more vampire like, because this scene was really good. Because it was reminding you, like, no, this is Dracula. Like, he bites people for blood, and this is why he looks younger now. And they kind of stopped doing that throughout this film. But I guess he just ate enough blood from these nuns and went to France. And, right, like, we know that when he told the story about the first time he bit somebody, which was like Maria, and she was at this like thing where everybody was kind of laughing at him, and I forget why, but it was just really rude rich people. But he goes there and he finds Maria, and she's still locked up. And you know, it's interesting, the patients at that mental hospital, they like bowed down to him in silence, and like one was like barking like a dog. That was my favorite character in that hospital, because I was like, why is he barking? But I felt bad for him too. But boy, he stopped barking. But these guys, they kind of look like the people he met in his past too. Well, at least one of them looked like the guy who showed him the perfume that he bought. But you know, that young boy, that young man, he had to become the victim, and Maria tore him up. And then he looked like a vampire, and the priest and this doctor were like, he's here. We gotta get Mina. We gotta find Mina. But Maria finds Mina first, and they hang out, and they go to this carnival. And you know what was really cool? I love that this was like an old school carnival, just a bunch of carnies, right? Like, and we see like a woman dressed up as a mermaid. We see like a guy pretending to be really strong. You know, they had the carnival games that are all rigged, but you know, Dracula knew how to do it. He knew how to shoot. He knew how to win the prizes. And my favorite scene is when Dracula first sees Mina. Like, his heart, like, you've seen happiness in a vampire. And it wasn't like happiness like, ooh, I need your blood, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is like, oh my God, this is the woman of my dreams. This is my true lover. Like, he is literally, truly in love. And that's why I said I wish that the one thing I can nitpick about this film that I can say that I didn't like is I wish they had more, again, like I said, more vampire scenes, like just be more vampire-like. Like, I wanted to see Dracula, you know, how can he walk around this carnival or, like, you know, around all these people, not get the, like, fiend, like a drug for blood, right? But I understand why they didn't, because the love story of Dracula and his wife is the most important thing to showcase. And this is why I love this film, because of that. And because in that scene, and this is before they go to the carnival, you see him just, he felt human. He felt human. You forget that for this moment, you really forget that Dracula is a vampire. Now you're just looking at Vladimir, right? This is like, if you really think about it, it's like, I'll use Star Wars, right? Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. Anakin loved his girl, Padme, but when he lost her, he became Darth Vader. Vladimir was in love with his wife, Elizabeth, or now who's the doppelganger of Mina, right? And he's just in love with her, so he was Vladimir. At this moment, like, he didn't look like Dracula. He didn't look like a vampire. And I thought that was really good. Right? And then that's when they go hang out. You know, they were bonding with each other. And you could just see that Mina was having these, like, reincarnation memories just reappearing. And my favorite thing was the music box scene, right? He was very gentlemanlike. He never done nothing. He kept his distance away. But he's like, how can I, appreciate this music box if I can't give you this as a gift? Like, I want you to have it. And she took it. But that song from the music box just brought back old memories. And that's all. He knew that he needed her to remember. So he never, like, forced it. He never forced it. He was a gentleman about it. And this is, to me, at times, this film, I'm rooting for them, but I knew, I know that it's the story of Dracula. If you've seen one Dracula movie, you've seen them all, right? But this point, like, this is why I love this movie, because it really gets you hooked. You're like, because again, I was rooting for him, but I knew that, okay, he's the bad guy, though, right? The antagonist at the time, right? But I just loved that. And then the priest and the doctor realized, oh, he's here, we gotta save her now. But he walked her home, didn't bother her. She went to like a hotel. This is what Airbnb would be back in the day, right? And they're trying to be with her, but they went and met the husband of Mina, or fiance at least, because I didn't know they didn't get married. Because we learned that Mina, every time she sees a preacher or a priest, she goes berserk, and the reason why is since Dracula has rebuked. I hope that's the right word. God doesn't want God no more. And when a vampire bites you, in a way, it controls you. You're the the vampire that bites you. That's your master. So if he doesn't like priest and God, she automatically don't. She goes berserk. So they share the same rage and emotion. And the guy and Jonathan and the priest, boy, when they got her and they cut her head, I was like, dang, this thing got real scary. Like, I didn't know. She was horny, but she was ready to eat and drink some blood for this thing. But they got her, and then they went off to save Mina. And what's really interesting, too, is Mina finally got her memories back from Elizabeth or Isabella. And, they had their moment, her and Dracula, and she wanted to go with him. And they did, but the priest brought some soldiers that were going to infiltrate the castle. And it was a whole fight, battling, cannonballs being shot. And what's really crazy is that at the end of this whole thing, the priest and Dracula have this conversation twice. And he's like, if you love her, you'll let the thing that's supposed to be happening. He needed to be stabbed with Oh wait, with the wooden stick, basically in the heart. And after he realized, like, yeah, he's the curse to his wife, his true love, and so he made that sacrifice. And I felt bad for Jonathan because Mina did not care about Jonathan, and she said she wasn't in love with him, but something always kept telling her, like, nah, that's not who you really love, because she's a doppelganger. And again, at the end of the film, he Dracula is released from the curse because he accepts his fate, and you just see the ashes of Dracula go into the sky and stuff. But that's how that movie ended, and this is a Romeo and Juliet type story, and I liked it. It was, there was no happy ending to it, and you know, I know it's based off a book, and I don't have enough information about the book, but I do think there could be a sequel. Like, I would love to see maybe Mina, become a vampire, right? Like the priest is kind of like a Van Helsing type character, so he can be a vampire hunter again. But I would love to see her, become the female version of Dracula. If they do one, I think that'd be cool. But I don't know if there's a book about it. I know there's a book on this, but I'm not. Again, I don't know enough information about it. But as far as how this movie goes, this is an awesome movie, and I think this is a movie that definitely deserves a part two. And I would just love to see a female version vampire, which would be Mina. So I think that would be cool. But really awesome, again, like when that ending comes, she now it's like she's sad as and she's grieving as much as Dracula was grieving for her. And now she's all alone, she in a way, and it just seems like everybody just ditched her, even Jonathan, but he got friend zoned hard in that scene. Like, I was like, ouch. Ouchies. Like, man, that hurt. But, it's a gothic Valentine's story, and didn't happen happy ending, which it shouldn't. And that was a great ending, and I loved it. So, if I had to give this again a 1 out of 10, I'm going to give this an 8.5. This was really good. There's some things I wish they did. Again, I wish they had more vampire theme scenes to it where he was more acting like a vampire. But again, I understand that the love story was more important for this because that's where we're looking through the lens of love. So I get that, but definitely a great film, and it's worth watching again at least, and again and again. But great film, guys. But that is my spoiler review, everybody. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Great Talking Entertainment Official channel. Subscribe, hit that notification button so you can always be updated with all my latest content. Thank you, guys, and peace